worked over the annex there. We thought this would change. Once again, that was our goal. We're all keep stretch it to solid till it reaches, and then we go back and we wait for next year. What we've done, I'm talking over the chief, I'm talking over the chiefs, our marshal, sheriff, everybody else is good. What do we need? We've got the list.
The office, the attorney's office wasn't on that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think the concept is one reason we need to take it in. And not to interrupt you, we have a hospital concerns about communications, and then we have a major incident.
The goal today is identification of user groups.
Right.
That's it. It's like that conversation I want to talk. It's like communication between fire department and law enforcement. Is that a necessity? Or is it just going to be a disease?
So, the state has mandated an interoperability program, and according to the Houston area or Houston Galveston area conference, that we do have to have communications in some form or fashion with law enforcement, depending on fire, EMS, whatever the case may be. It's our decision how we limit that to law enforcement, but we have to have the capabilities in order to stay in compliance with the state plan. I've learned a lot about communications in the last 2 weeks. And I talked to a gentleman with Houston Galveston, and according to our score in the county, below par, which we do that, they have a survey put out by, and our score is 3. And that red flag us. What's that going to do to us? I don't know. Does that help us get some grant funds? Possible. But we're not in compliance. And compliance is a big word. So we're working that process now. We're having this workshop. We've identified we have a problem. So that's helping us along. Are they going to come back and do anything now? We're identifying it, we're putting it in motion. And thank you, Leon, for bringing that up once before about, hey, we can't talk a little bit. And we can. We have a hard time talking to fire departments. Some of them are running 800, some of them are still on VHF. Can't hear them too well. That's a problem. We've identified it, now we're working.
Anyway, Bill's going to be working radio side. I know that obviously
Yes. So who's going to be doing the programming
that will be Bill.
for the law enforcement too?
We're going to work with you guys and Hendricks as well on the programming. And
I would just think that you guys would be programming the fire side, someone the law enforcement side.
you're going to need a point of contact. And irregardless, we're going to have to work that sideline, but we'll work with you and we'll be transparent.
Main thing is, if you want to appoint a liaison with an SO, that's good. You don't get together and make it. I'll be working with Bill also in the office. Yeah, all the office. We don't need 15 hospitals, see one person.
So that means we're gonna pick someone to program them on the outside, or? I mean, I don't want to be programming your stuff, and I didn't think you wanted to be programming law enforcement stuff. I know we gotta pick.
We're all county, so.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it doesn't matter. If you're available, great. If you're not, then we can do it. So, I mean, we just need to make sure it gets done.
The funding does it, including training. So somebody got to go to school.
So will the radios be checked out, or how are we gonna be? So if, like, would you check a radio out to me personally, or is it just the sheriff's office?
So it'll be identified as the number and to the sheriff. Okay, so the sheriff's department will be responsible for that. Will it have Billy Knox on it? No.
We won't have unit numbers or anything. You're just going to give a mass amount of radios. Sheriff's office will be responsible for assigning them and putting the unit number.
Yes, but it'll be logged. Every radio will have a log. That's the way program.
Has any thought been given? I'm speaking, I'm not a radio dude either, but I know, like, the county's always done it the way we've always done it. And if I had, like, who's over the radios now? So, like, what's the objection or pros and cons if each agency was responsible for their radios if they went to a program?
Well, we kind of did that in the past. Next thing you know, there's one agency in the county that had all the radios, and everybody was needing some. They fixed that. That's what I saw.
Now, I think what Knox is saying is fire department is responsible for y'all's radio. And who y'all get to program them is y'all's problem. Sheriff's department is responsible for our radio. Who we get to program them is our problem.
Constables.
And constables and whoever else. A central registry of what agency this number of radios went to, but the programming is left up to the agency that received them. That way, fire department's not programming our radios. We're not programming constables' radios. Each individual entity is responsible for getting their radios programmed. I think that's what got.
Trying to, yeah, I'm just trying to see, because I tried to answer, hey, who's over all the radios now? And
It's a free for all.
It's a free for all right now. Everybody's got their own thing.
you know, we're bringing radios into the mix, kind of offset it. Now you have the dispatch radio, so who's going to be doing all that, and then you have
The towers.
and the towers. Yes, yes.
Is this all encompassing all communications within the county? Or is this just in-car and handheld radios? Is this bringing in our dispatch center? The towers that we use and lease, the new tower, is this radio, is it bringing everything in or just?
You know, we're not going to be leasing the tower.
Right, but today we are.
Yeah, today you are, yeah. It'll be good if it's budget groups, okay?
Right,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. So I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. Is this going to be an all-encompassing communications? One individual is overseeing all communications? Or is this going to be individual? I mean, I don't.
Well, I'd like to have one person overall.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But at the same time, that's what I'm asking about the liaison. You don't do a point someone out here. So it probably two people, because just like on shift, somebody says, "Be the radio back then." You didn't come in the next one. But for the accountability aspect, Robert, I think really shaking out radio. Just need one person.
Right.
You know, one group. That's why I got Bill. Twist his arm over and say, "How about doing this?" That way we know where they are, we know where they're side. One point of contact for all of them.
But he's not going to be issuing a radio, say an in-car to unit number like mine, C207247. He's going to be given an in-car radio to the sheriff's department.
Yeah.
Where we put it It's up to us.
That's right, up to you.
The handheld, you're gonna give us X number of handhelds. to
And
sign
who you
the
give it
sheriff.
to is up
It's
to
up to
you.
us.
Right.
And we program.
That's gonna be a question we need to get. It's gonna require somebody going to school.
Yeah, you have-
So are we buying the key to actually do the programming?
I think we already have one key. It's what they're out.
No.
We do not. All of our radios go to Harris County.
Unless I miss them, Harris County has to approve for us to program.
That's correct.
And under the P25, just because you're on VHF or you're on 800, we can be in compliance. All you have to do is create a patch system inside the dispatch center itself. So
That's also
there is
correct.
ways.
But we also need to be P25 people.
Right.
So I guess what we're asking is, I'll get together. Sheriff, two sheriff. Captain Ox, Sheriff Rader. Captain. It's somebody's name, you feel this, and you want to work.
Yeah, we don't have a problem with that.
Also, department also the DA's office. You've got all courthouse security and, the sheriff has a bailiff, also they work with judges. So we make sure that they're equipped.
Right, they kind of would follow, I guess, fall under our umbrella as far as the radios, and then the county attorney's office has their mental health officers. So we need to make sure that they are. good as well. And then there's also the elephant in the room. I know that we're here talking about the county radio situation. We also have an entity in the county, Cleveland Police Department operates on a completely different system and cannot communicate with anyone else in the county, including, I think, they're the Cleveland ISD. So we, I mean, if
Well, then there you go, the ISPs, you know, we also need to talk about that.
I feel like if we're gonna do this, then we need to solve some of these problems.
I know on our end, so like ours, the majority of our new handhelds were purchased out of the seizure fund. So our plan was to donate the used radios to the Cleveland PD on the handheld.
Okay, and that's what, if we got new ones, that's what we would do through our office. I just want to make sure that we're, you know, I'm,
Says you're gonna donate, your department donate, you can have to.
Yes.
That we have now.
Because they have 10 of our in-cars now, but they don't. The seizure fund paid roughly for 40 of these radios, and the plan was to donate these handhelds to the people.
If you don't mind, Don. What are radios? That way.
Yes, because I've got, right, I've got the 10 that we donated to them for their in-cars. I've got that inventory now.
I think, Aaron, we put $2.5 million.
How much, I didn't make the,
$2.5 million.
we're gonna have to quick.
Well, how many radios, what, 5,000 each cheap? Handheld.
Handhelds are in.
They're not cheap.
Well, I've used
No,
one.
the old one.
That's old days. That's old days,
They
Joe.
are effective.
Just have to be in
They
your
are
hand.
effective. It's like a brick with a,
They are.
with a whip.
Jack's gonna put a book on something else. So like,
Well, it's action sound, okay.
Anyway, sure, can't help together. Let's designate a couple of folks out here so that it's working bill. On the top side, y'all need to say. Last year here, you got anything you want to throw in here, please do.
I'm just always worried about when they start cloning and whoever's in charge of programming radio. There's a lot of back channels we use that have stuff we don't, that, you know, I mean, it's recorded and documented, but we wouldn't want the public to hear what operations we're. And if someone out there is in charge of it and doesn't have Well, let's say they start, you're my buddy, I'm gonna go ahead and put these channels on your radio. It could cause us problems down the road if we lose control over communication security. Also, that's what I worry about.
Well, each agency has to have a written permission letter for each channel that you program in your radio. So whenever we had our program, you had to have one from Harris County, you had to have one from Montgomery County, you got to have Beaumont, you got to have every channel that you're going to request for your group. You have to have a letter on file. So he'll have to have a letter on file for each entity as to what their talk is allowed and what's not allowed.
Well, the main thing is to get the problem solved. Problem. Need solution. Solve the problem. Next one. I had this patience to take. Motorola guys are gathered.
Yes, sir.
Got any words of wisdom that we need to listen to at this point?
Program is the least of the issue. If that's something to do, my shop can do it out of Alexandria, y'all can do it here locally. IDs are the biggest thing to get for tech form. Radios are not cheap. You need special ones for fire, you can wear it on your bunker gear and go in the house. And then VA standards are changing to 23. Current radio price is not meeting that standard because there's not one out there yet. Motorola just got one into test facility in the last 30 days. Other than that, I mean, you know, need each department to come up with. I'm sorry. We need each department and entity to come up with how many radios you need, portable, mobile. What accessories? Remote speaker microphones. Do you want multi-unit chargers? I'm talking about checking out radios per shift. You need extra batteries. Do you want encryption in these radios? Your SWORD team, absolutely. Fire may need it because a specific channel to talk to the SWORD team. I don't know if y'all do it in Texas like we do in Louisiana, where they're making a no knock, they're standing by, especially on meth lab. So there's a lot of those types of things. But as far as getting a quotation out and making that happen, that's a few hours. I have a list of each department. I'll be happy to sit down with these teams and do whatever we got to do to decide who needs what and how many of each. I don't have a problem with that. Yes, I live in Jennings, Louisiana, and I'm only about 2 hours from here. And I spend a lot of time in Deep East, Texas. I am the official MR for Motorola Direct for Deep East Texas Council of Government. And I'm helping them with their new tower system like we're waiting on y'all right now for y'all. Anybody have any other questions?
I have a couple of comments. So I'm moving along with Motorola Solutions. So thanks for allowing us to come to your meeting today. So the biggest thing that we need to be able to help you out from a budgetary standpoint, we have a couple of different options for you. So we want to throw it out there for you. So we need to know how many handheld radios do you need and break it down by departments. We need to know if those radios are for law enforcement only, and then how many for fire that you need. Do specialty radios for fire need to be UL compliant, which is the current standard. However, it just opened up the new test standards for FM approved or intrinsically safe, whatever the buzzword bingo is for the day. They just opened that up, and it'll be months before they decide what that standard looks like for fire, but that's an option. So you need to look at that if you want to have an intrinsically safe radio for fire. Once we know what those counts look like, then we can start breaking that down by how many spare batteries do you need to have, how many single unit chargers that you need to have, how many game chargers do you need to have, how many microphones that you need to have. And then flip of that, how many apparatus radios do you need? On those radios, do they need to be dash mount where everything's built into one compact, or do you need to have separation by having a remote mount and it comes 17-foot standard, or does it need to be longer? So we need to look at that as well. So we need to break it out. So especially for fire, Because if we have a jacked up cab, it could go up to 155 feet. So we need to have separation on that. So we get it right the first time for you. So if we can break those down. And then how many radios need hardware encryption? So you're going to use ARPA funds, which means if you're going to get encryption, it has to be hardware encryption. It cannot be a software type encryption, since those are federal dollars coming in.
This is a different ARPA account.
Okay.
So that doesn't fall into that.
Okay, just making sure. Now, the other thing that we've had, so far I work in 40 counties. I've had 2 counties actually pull the trigger on their ARPA funds already. One of them's Hamilton and one of them's your neighbor, Hardin County. So they've already, Hardin County has already spent money on law enforcement radios using ARPA funds. So you may want to reach across the county line and ask them, hey, what kind of things did you consider whenever you pulled the trigger on this? But one of the things that I have seen, and I haven't seen it in about 8 years, is Motorola does offer government financing if we need to kick the can down the road. And by that, I mean, you're able to use, say, 75% of ARPA funds for this project, because I know you got everybody with their hand out on, hey, look, we got some money that we haven't had before. And you may need to finance a part of this initiative. We do offer that. We go from 0 years up to 7 years in arrears, if that's an option for you to help you out with something to look at. So we do offer that also. But we're looking forward to the opportunity. Any questions that you have, we can tell you what we've seen in the trends. We can tell you what we've seen in other counties. And we do have a little bit of experience with all the funding already. So
I'll reach out to Judge. Of course, he's ex-Leo too. Anyway.
Right.
But I'm blessed because I had 3 Leos up here.
there you go.
So it works out well. They understand all this a lot better.
Understood. So we appreciate the chance, but just keep that in mind while you're looking at this. I know that you've got a couple of years before you've got to pull the trigger as far as money spent with the ARPA funds, and then you've got to have everything true up by the end of 26. So understand that, but want to make sure we get it right for you. And we have several different opportunities for you. Okay.
Super brother on the
All right. Thank you.
All right. So that would be pretty much it. The sheriff will get his arms. Sergeant will get his arms.
Well, back to what Les was saying, that, correct, on his concern or whatever, what I think. Certain channels, if there's certain channels that only need to be in law enforcement radio, make sure whoever will program needs to know that, and they're not put in all.
Right, yeah, right. We understand what you're saying.
You know, I don't know. I don't know. Curiosity, you know, being my supervisor, so but they want to have fire department channel on there as well.
Right.
But just, it's not the entire, it's making some like that. The other box. Or you. Well, I know you show we have security.
Yes, sir. About the program, Judge,
Yes, sir.
we, K-Radio and Motorola in Louisiana have the L-WIN system, which is similar with Texas. When we have a fire department and a law enforcement agency, there's a primary channel
Right.
between the two, and that's all the two that ever touch.
That's the only two.
That's it.
you touch, right?
The PD or the SO can click over to fire. I'm on scene, command. Where do you need me to set a roadblock?
Their back channels is left up to
And,
them.
and the rest of the radio is left up to fire, and the rest of the radio is left up to law enforcement.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that crosses. And it's simple to do.
It's simple. Anybody got any more input, questions, suggestions?
No, we just need to roll the sleeves up.
Well, it's a start.
It's a start.
Yeah.
Right now, to answer your question, I'm at roughly 200 with EMS and fire, and we're still gathering information with SO and constables and DA's office. And if I left anybody out, I apologize. No, just EMS and fire, I'm at 200.
So are the ESDs able to provide any money to the programming? And I asked that because we have a,
And I knew you was gonna bring that up, Billy, that's probably gonna be another sideline conversation that we need to talk about, because I understand, they're a political subdivision, and they're, they get their tax entities and stuff, but, county-wide, we need to be in compliance.
well, I agree with that. I guess what I was gonna propose is we've got a major radio, a tower that we have to move equipment from. The county has to pay to have it moved. And I was like, just brainstorming, hey, we're the ESDs, we're helping them out, would they be willing to help pay for the 6-pack and the system transferred off the old tower to the new one? So, I mean, just.
I remember once upon a time, we tried to get all the cities involved too. But yeah, so do all those things. Remember that?
No, we didn't.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, the cities want to be included. We probably need.
Of course they do.
Well, yeah,
Of course they do.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, but we also need to talk. That's $2.5 million, we're gonna burn that quick.
Probably, we'll identify all the days, we're probably. Have to,
Unless we squeeze Motorola real good, we'll get it there.
I think they missed that conversation.
Okay, so, Sheriff Captain, don't. Yes. Dang it, that's terrible when you're the only one that shows up, right? Okay, so you get your point. Anyway, y'all get together. I want you. Anybody else?
Yes, you don't include.
Absolutely. Handle it.
How are we gonna work this throughout all the ISDs?
I hadn't quite gotten that far. When Jennifer brought it up a while ago, light came on. So, and it hit it.
And with all the school shootings and everything else going on right now, really.
Generally,
Nate works with Harris County. Nate works with Harris County. So, I mean, that's something we're going to sit down with Jessica on and talk with her. Just gonna have to.
I think y'all gotta keep us informed in progress, not wait for the end. Because they'll pop.
Yeah,
Progress.
absolutely. No excuse, but we just started on this thing a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
No, ISD has their own.
They have their own tower, UHF. They have their own UHF tower. They have their own dispatch center.
Cleveland.
Yeah, they have their own dispatch center, last I heard.
Harold, y'all had this pretty important. That's just for Motorola.
Well, yes, there's a couple contracts on Motorola. I'd like to confirm with them that we're talking about utilizing the RAO 521 contract.
That's correct, so HVAC is.
Okay, I guess HGAC has vetted it, that it has met the standards for the ARPA funding.
Yes.
Okay. They did do that?
So one of the things we can do with ARPA funding, since we've already been down this road a couple times already, is we can put it into a standard radio system contract that we have, and then we can put in all the, I believe there's up to 74 pages for drop downs for ARPA funding that we can put into that contract and make it all work out for you. So I can get that boilerplate put together for you, so you can.
Yeah, if you'll send it to me, because I'll have Grant Works as our ARPA fund administrator, so
Okay,
I just
and
would
we
like
work,
them
and
to
we work
approve
with
it.
them already.
Okay.
So we can do that. I'll give it to you after.
Okay.
Billy, to answer your question a while ago about ESP,
Yeah.
I did, we've asked the cities to step in and help and stuff like that. And, you know,
Yeah, I was just bringing the tower up because it's gonna cost money. The county
yeah,
hasn't budgeted to move all that equipment from the old tower to the new one.
right.
And I was like, man. And he said, you guys have a radio, we got to help out with the cost on that. moving that equipment over. It's just food for thought.
Yeah.
That's kind of hard to find. No, it is.
Judge, just get the ball rolling. There's gonna be hiccups that we can address later. Just get this in the process, big steps on money to do that. It's needed.
One thing I want to make clear is Nick is not over communication with radio. I think either one of you-
Come on, Nick.
I like the challenge, but.
Nick does IT.
I just thought it was nice. You gotta help him make justice.
Working on the department.
Well, did it? That's, y'all kind of have an assignment. This bird is really good, right? So y'all need help. Spell check.
We're good at it.
All right. Anybody else got any questions? Matt? anything?
Sir,
Got any questions?
I think you've done most of it.
Let's drive on. Okay, well, next one probably is gonna bore y'all pretty well. So. We'll talk about variables.
Oh, I'm gonna talk about that. I'm gonna sit down, talk for a while anyway.
Yeah, we'll take a minute to keep break.
Yes, sir, I can stop the video.
Looking for Jennifer real quick.
Hey. Talk about pretty much it. It's gonna happen. What is, we only have forward. Population's growing, and all burials is growing too. And all those people that live with the guys die. Anyway, our expenses have grown 40,000. So it's a lot. It happens that way. We have to do something. So now we have to sit out here and discuss this criteria that are these for all costs. Transport. You know, invariably what happens is someone will pass. Be collectively, it's really. So it might be the best to say, if there's an inquest, yes, that. If there's an autopsy, they look to Jefferson County. Look also at the government. So would it work better? Or, you know, if got the guy, the VA standpoint, probably so.
I think anything at this point would be better for Jefferson County. I don't know, can I speak about it?
Sure.
So I don't know if all of you are aware, but our last two murder trials, the medical examiner from Jefferson County did not appear. And so we had to proceed, you know, with one in the 75th and one in the 253rd without the medical examiner. And we had to plead out the one that we just had in the 253rd in the middle of trial. And so, you know, we are very upset about that. My office contacted Montgomery County. They don't have the capacity at this point to do a contract, but they have a new facility that is opening in the fall. And I think at that point, that may be an option for us. I think we have to have another option at least for cases where we think it's a homicide. Because at this point, we're gonna have Montgomery County review every autopsy for all the murder cases that we have going to trial. And we're gonna have to pay them to do that, but I would rather do that and have at least have someone, you know, waiting behind the scenes to be able to appear if they don't show up. So
Yeah, it's expensive.
it is.
You know, the autopsy side, yeah. Transports, what we got that? We're looking at this. We're gonna look at having maybe a main funeral home service in the north, a main one in the south, maybe a couple of secondaries. Because you know how it happens. I mean, I've had doing inquests, I had the funeral home come from Harris County. Yes. I don't know what's the funeral home trying to do. They all have different procedures. So trying to get this to where it's streamlined. All the burials is a all the burials. Don't get so much money for that. It's information. Invariably, what happens is nobody wants to pay for it. And this is, I don't know. And then they come back after the cremation and say, oh, by the way, it's all bond. And I'm sure like that. So there's a lot of things we need to put into this. And that's what we looked at for our limit. Just for the year. We're just getting by. So that happens, you know, there's different laws. Looking at how achieve continue the service. Harold, time to talk.
Okay, last year we decided to go out for proposals and bids for the transport. And I basically did pick it up and transport it to Jefferson County and pay for a body, because that's kind of what they charge now. I started getting calls from different funeral homes. I think some commissioners did too, talking to me about asking other things that they sometimes provide or provide. So I kind of put that on hold last year. That was in August, but we're back now. We're hitting 50. Got to go ahead and do this and get it over. I handed you out. I went through several different counties, probably in different counties that had gone out for bids or proposals. And these are some of the things that they paid for. All the counties required to pay for is when the JP or law enforcement orders autopsy is paid to transport them to Jefferson County. Now, if they're pauper or nobody claims them, then we can pay to transport them back. If they're claimed by someone, we're not responsible for bringing them back like that. I don't see the bill, so I'm not sure. I don't think we're doing that, but I don't know. We don't have to, but there's nothing that says you can't pay for it. It's up to Commissioner's Court. So the question is, I know we were going to bid like north side, south side of the county, but we need to have boundaries to figure out exactly what the boundaries are. So there's never any question. Let's try it on with that.
I always kind of thought 105 cut us in half.
Yeah.
Is that what you want to call it? Or, Chief, you got a better idea?
We have the county did like 4 sectors right now already covered. And 105 is a basic.
105, 140.
Yeah, it dips down a little bit towards Kennebec a little bit, but it's basically.
You want to look at that, Harold?
Yeah.
Go north and south.
And
And
then
we've got
just,
some funeral homes that they
yeah, right.
get to, so, everybody has. Wells and,
Three.
There's one in Moss Hill.
yeah, there's,
It's
got
not-
funeral home in Mossville.
It's in Hart County.
But that's hard.
That's Hardin County. Oh, okay.
Faith family.
But it's not family, no,
Most of that,
But most of
Oh,
our
most
goes
of
away
it.
to family in our area.
you know, the whole thing is, funeral home shows up, it's pretty good business.
Yes.
But there's gonna be a family thing for it. So we have to limit what our thing. Everybody. Just bring it to me. So, what's a smart way to go about it, Harold? That's
Yeah,
what
so-
we figure out.
some of the other things, like say north, south, we figured that out. Do y'all like it whether several of them on rotation or we let contract one or two? It'd be easier to have one contract.
I really like the idea of having several on rotation, because if you get an accident down here, you get a homicide, you got law enforcement out there waiting for hours on the funeral home, and you got one funeral home, and they're tied up, maybe if they're tied up and can't get there, then you need to go to the next one.
Can I jump in there?
Yeah, no.
We got rotation now.
Yeah.
We have some reps from Sturgis. Anybody else from? Here for Neil. Neil, okay. So if y'all want to ask them questions of how it works now.
Well,
be a good time to do it.
like for us at Sterling, we have the capability of transporting 4 people at one time. We have 2 removal vans, looking at possibly a 3rd vehicle. But yes, right now we currently have 2, and I have staff that's all local, lives local, that if, you know, one of us is out on one call, we've got staff that can do another call. So, and we're partnered with Allison's, as one of our firms too. So, I mean, if worst came to worst, we could reach out to them as well.
Y'all live in the same county, carriage.
Yes, yes,
Y'all can probably handle this out.
yes. But right now, currently, we don't go, right now is the, I think Neil and Pace go on our side of 105. We've never been past, I mean, very, very small distance past Calhoun's and we're cut off. That goes to their side, but I'm not opposed to expanding that.
Yeah. We would always ask people, whoever's there, you know, do you have a preference? If they have a preference, that takes us out.
That's right.
Then we just call that funeral.
We still ask that question.
Yeah.
But we're still, so anytime, so this is where I think a lot of the confusion comes in on the funeral homes is when we're contacted by dispatch, whether a family has requested the funeral home or we're being contacted to transport, we're still billing the county for that call, whether it's a family request for us to come out because it was an unattended death and the JP being there and the PD calling us or the SO calling us, that at that point, it's deemed a county rotation call.
Well, if the family makes a request, then it's on them, or as I would say, it wouldn't be, it wouldn't be our bill or never called funeral home.
Well, you need to make sure that all the funeral homes are aware of that because that's
Yeah,
not.
that's just my thought. I'm not.
Yeah.
That's
How does that
not-
work, Harold? Only time we're paying is when they're going for an autopsy. We don't pay to pick up at the funeral home.
Okay.
But y'all are billing for it?
Everybody's been billing for that. County rotation, if we receive a call, whether it is from the PD or the SO, as long as it's a unattended death, we've always billed for that.
Does that mean if you take an autopsy?
Or to the funeral home.
If she's called out.
On my contract.
She calls out, if she's called out, period, she's charged.
So on my contracts, it'll say transfer to autopsy or transfer to funeral home. It'll say that on there.
That's where it's a declared body or not.
If the county requests an autopsy, then it comes to our.
But if the judge says no autopsy, but the family doesn't have a funeral home, we're still holding the body for 24 hours, 24, sometimes 72 hours for a family to make a decision. So at that point, we have to charge because we're tying up our cooler for families that may be using us. We're tying up our space and we're still paying staff to go on that call while we're waiting for a family to make a decision that may not even be using our funeral home.
He's talking about the difference between the family on the site says, we're going to Sterling.
Right.
Then you should bill the family. If the family on the site says, we don't know yet, Sterling's rotation, then Sterling bills the county because they didn't know yet. That's too much.
Yeah, if we have strict funeral home, then that's our responsibility.
The family fixed the funeral home, but they chose you
The
already.
family says, the same way with a record call, on a record, you know, if the person there says, I want this record, that's the record they get, then we're out of it, Let me ask you, are you on call 24/7?
I am.
Yeah, John Doe passed away. John Doe says, I'm gonna take a page service, I'll just work. They can pick up the phone. 24 hours. So instead of dispatch saying, hey, tell me what's wrong.
So we don't ever know till we get out there necessarily if it's a family request. Now, here's the other problem you get into when it's a family request. Some of these families feel pressured that they have to make a decision. So they go, oh, I want to use Sterling. But the next day I call the family to set an appointment and they don't want to use us. They want to use Pace. Well, then I'm out the money. Because they don't feel like they have to pay me at that point because they were pressured in making a decision.
I would think that Pace would come get the body. Is that right?
Yeah, they don't pay us.
Commissioners,
Pace does not pay us to come get their body from us.
Since we're not zooming, it's hard for you to see this, but Sarah Carter from Allison is on here and she's making notations that Allison does not bill the county for family requests. So she's saying that they don't charge for this scenario.
Well, that's a first, because we've got access to their records, and I know that they were doing it in the past, because that's how I was trained. From Mike Page.
That's what she says.
Been my experience, the funeral homes in Bell County, and I would think you can go around.
Well, we'll change that.
If you pick them up and then they wanted Allison to do it, then Allison will pick them up. And that would be added on to Allison would pay y'all, and that would be added on to their funeral bill.
Got it.
Don't you think?
You just hold it till they pay you.
You can't hold a body for ransom in the state of Texas.
And then if there's nobody there making decisions, then the county has to make decisions.
We call rotation.
Over rotation, we take it. And then we pay you for the initial pickup, and if they want, time to come in, want Dallas, they'll do it, they'll go pick them up.
Okay.
So you talk, the county pays for when the rotation's happening. I imagine there will be a rare occasion where a family will change their mind the next day.
It's not a very rare, it's a very frequent occasion.
The funeral homes are gonna have to work that out between the funeral home, that's not the county problem, it's the family problem.
We can't leave it up to the family, it's no, they tell us the funeral. home.
Right.
Sure, family trying to get a hold of funeral home in the middle of the night.
Okay, and then what about those calls that we get called in the middle of the night? We have staff en route. Okay, this has happened probably 6 times in the last several months. Middle of the night, we get called out. It's a rotation call. 20 minutes into my staff being gone from the funeral home, we get a call and the call's been canceled. I still have to pay my staff.
Who called, who canceled?
The sheriff's office,
Because of.
they won't tell us.
I'll
I'll call.
give you a reason why they're canceled. Well,
No, and it's happened during the day too, where they've called us, we've taken the death call, we've dispatched staff. Either the staff is on their way to the funeral home or they've left the funeral home and they're calling and canceling.
well, then we should have a set fee for call out and cancel. Set fee for call out, pick up.
Yeah, I believe that would be fair.
Huh?
I believe that would be fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried to call back and all dispatch tells me is, I don't know, I was just told to cancel.
That's all they do. That's all this, that's all this.
Yeah, and we, yeah,
That's all the decisions.
See, I was on the scene, making decisions on the families. That's how this is when they, all they told them.
Right.
These records are the same way. Cancel records all the time.
Be similar to the fee if you, someone's breaking into your house. When I live in Harris County, if you have a false call, please show up,
Oh, yeah.
$75, bam.
it's us too.
Right,
If the
same idea.
alarm goes off.
Right, same idea. If it's a false alarm for there's a fee that the county pays for the false alarm. And maybe the officers, whoever's calling out, say, hey, the guy's dead, is dead, not dead. Fine.
Well, the initial thing of the saying, it may be just the investigating officer there, and there's nobody there to make a decision, so he calls for rotation work. Before anything can happen, some of the family shows up, they say, well, we want this to be home. So, that happens.
Yeah. And I understand that.
So there's a fee the county can pay to say, hey, because still someone is dispatched. Business has transacted.
It's just to be a lot of things in motion in this thing, it's not just a simple, here and that.
We had the same problem once. The in route, and then we'd say, hey, turn around. I still got a $50 bill, whatever. And we stopped that. So we put it on salary side of it. So want to put funds in place. Turn around and go back home. I don't know.
Yeah, some counties pay a first call,
fee, and then they have transport for an autopsy.
Yeah.
Some do, some don't. Some don't. But like you said, it's a lot more complicated when you start looking into it.
Yeah.
For instance, if we go out for bids, and the 5 funeral homes I think we have that participate now all bid, and they're all different amounts. We talk about putting in a rotation, well, we can't pay them, they're all gonna have to be the same amount. Actually, so we'll have to do it as proposals and kind of negotiate with them.
And we'll have to come up with a price of our own of what we're willing to pay, to see if they're willing to do it. If they want to be on rotation, just like the records.
We decide what we're gonna pay for, or what price we're gonna pay, and any of the fuel services that want to be on the rotation.
They accept those terms, yeah. If they don't want to, if they're choosing not to be on.
And that's what y'all put records in, right? Y'all set the fee. Participate or not participate, here's the fee.
Yeah, yeah, but we want the fee to be reasonable, or, we're not expecting, come out there with money.
That's $5 a gallon of gas, you know.
The other thing is it's gonna be, I mean, if you're gonna do that, I can't speak for the other funeral homes, but we send 2 people out on every call.
Yeah.
So, it's a good idea to determine in whatever fee that you set, if that's gonna be for 1 person or 2.
Yeah.
To go on that call, because I don't like showing up to a call and having to ask if I'm by myself. I don't want to ask the fire department or the police. It's not their job to help us. But yes, I'm grateful when they say, oh, let us help you. We'll help you. It's not a problem, but we try to send 2 people on every call.
Cool. I've been on a lot of them things, I've never seen the police hesitate to help out, whatever they need to.
Here's my, I'm not. I don't that much better. I don't ever hear about it until we need to figure out what all is on. We need to get all the funeral homes together and sit here together to make it. I think we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Say, what are you willing to do? Y'all are gonna have to stand together. I think it's more hands to talk about. And then we can make some choices here, especially in our RFP process. Not what we're gonna approve.
Yeah, because we need to hear your side of this, we need to hear your side of the story too. You heard mine, but, we need to hear what all, just things that we don't understand.
Right.
Or be fair.
No, and I feel like y'all have been very fair to us, and we try not to, push any buttons or anything, so we just bill you for what we have agreed to bill y'all for since the last meeting. So, and I appreciate that.
And we're not, I don't think any of us complained about that. We just want to get something that works for everybody.
No, I think getting everybody together is a brilliant idea, because yes, I think everybody needs to be on the same page. Because I get phone calls, and I'm not gonna say who calls me, but I get phone calls from judges, one, on response times for people outside of our funeral home, because our people are local and not everybody has local people. And I get phone calls on billing, why this funeral home's charging for mileage and this and that, and we're charging for a body bag and the transport.
Yeah.
I mean, they're confused too, because they're like, I thought it was $600, but this funeral home is charging me 700 plus mileage. So I think they need to be on the process as well.
They do it, it all needs to be.
Wouldn't this be better solved if we get one representative from every funeral parlor in the area to sit down with Stephanie or Harold? And
Yes.
talk about the prices and set and bring something back to us that we can vote on and approve or disapprove.
Well, I think include the commissioners, because we got questions.
Yeah, because I'd like to be involved.
Yeah, Greg definitely needs to be involved, because he sees them no more than any of us.
Yeah.
There's the sheriff.
But
He's dealing
Chief,
with
I
it.
like the idea of making this in for audience.
I used to.
Because coincides with what you do. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I didn't realize y'all had that many.
And we're fixing to have the only cooler, I can't speak for Neil, but we're fixing to have the only cooler that's gonna accommodate up to 16 bodies.
I have a question about that. And this stuff comes across my desk or through the office. We do burial transits and all that. But the other day, we did a delayed birth certificate for a body that was finally identified. It had been in storage for years. And they happened to mention the bill to me and it took my breath away. I don't know if is that how we're doing that? We're having unidentified bodies stored at a funeral home until we figure out who they are?
So after 10 days at autopsy, and state law is after 10 days, if they're not claimed, then we have to, we try to find the legal next of kin or a family member as soon as possible. But the morgue will call us after 10 days and say, nobody's claimed this body, y'all need to, if the funeral home that took the body to the morgue, they have notes of that, they'll call us and say, okay, it's been 10 days, you need to come get this body.
This one had been there for years.
Yeah.
And then finally, the DNA or whatever, they finally identified it. And so they called us to create the delayed death certificate. And then, but I saw the bill on that one. It was like, oh God, it was like, it's not our bill, I'm sending it on. But I think you probably ought to address that or how we're going to do it.
Yeah, because it happens, but it's not
a whole
very
lot.
rare.
Yeah.
It does happen. There's also state laws to how long you have to
Yes.
keep. Otherwise, we cremated them.
Yeah.
I think last year we did one where I don't know, over 100 days. They finally, we did a burial in Cleveland. 3 of us were there because we want to honor the person
right
for who they are, still a person. I think 3 weeks later, someone called the funeral home, and that was my cousin. We had advertisements in during the newspaper and for over a year. No one claimed the body. We called everyone. We called state, and of course, after the burial, hey, that's my great uncle's second cousin's dog's sister's whatever. We want some money. So they were a homeless person.
Yeah.
So you now owe us $25,000. Congratulations.
It's just, I did, at the time it was one of those things like, wow, that's amazing. But I never really got a chance to ask anybody about that. But I didn't know what our policy was for storing unidentified remains.
Who does pay for that? Who has to pay for that?
We paid for it, but I don't know where and how they paid for it, but I know
We
we
have to
paid
pay
for
for
it.
it. The body was found here. It was a homeless person. The body was found.
But I would negotiate that with a funeral home because, I'm not gonna speak for everybody else, but I'm not gonna charge y'all. Now, if it's in my 3-body cooler that I currently have and it's taking up space, it's one thing, but I would not charge you by the day. You would want to look at a flat rate for that, but that's why we're looking, that's why we have purchased a larger cooling system is to help with that because we're the sole funeral home for Chambers County on their county contract. We run the whole county. Sometimes I have 6, 8 people that we're holding between the 2 counties. So I've got
That's the reason we need to include y'all in that conversation. So we can understand all.
And I did send Harold a copy of our mortician services agreement so that he could look that over too with what we do and provide for Chambers.
Let's get the word out. One reason, don't be thinking about it. Join us. Do it right. What you think is worthy of discussion. We want to be fair about this.
I would understand that.
I won't be here next week.
Okay, not next week.
If we could do it before August 8th, I'll be out for about a month after August 8th.
Good. Today's the 7th.
I'm having,
Say 21st.
Yeah, the Thursday, the 21st, but I can do that.
That's 2 weeks out.
And do you want us to work on getting the funeral homes? And can we ask the judges to, or do we want to leave them out right now?
No, I prefer the judge to be here because everyone's making a call too.
Harold, is this something you're gonna reach out, or you want us to reach out to the funeral homes?
You have other
Yeah, we have.
contacts, right?
We get this.
She did, right. Harold, yes, sir. I know very little of this. Why would we bury a pauper instead of cremating? Well, we don't. We used to, yeah, we don't now. We're not gonna place to bury it. Yeah, we just changed that to cremation, so we just.
They're all cremations.
It's just so much cheaper to do that. There definitely needs to be a standardized set from the county, so that way the family comes to the funeral home, and we just do the county work.
Or, a JPD, say, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's nice. Once the cremation happens, you don't dig that guy. That's up to the Lord after that.
You know more about.
I
You know
do.
more about this guy.
Yeah, well,
It all boils down to.
So can I ask y'all one more question? I didn't mean to cut y'all on. When we discuss this, can we talk more about the, how to handle those county cremations? Because here's my thought, I think we could save the county quite a bit of money on those county cremations that we're doing if we had a little bit more of a stringent process in place and maybe having a way to qualify the families for a county cremation versus just giving anybody that says they're indigent a county cremation.
Yeah, I think we're gonna include everything.
Yeah.
Process right now, through.
Yeah.
Nobody has, they just say, we don't have no families, okay. we'll see
Or
what
we don't have
we'll
any
pay
money.
for it, Then y'all sign off on it.
That's the word.
could the judge do
That
that?
happens.
Do what?
Could the judge
Yes.
do that? JP do that? Judge is in charge of the body on my side.
Yeah.
Judge is in charge of the body to leave get that body to the morgue or to the funeral home, and then it's up to us.
We probably need legal opinion on that too, whatever we're.
A lot easier for the funeral, definitely for the judge to declare that.
I agree. I agree. Because I do 1 or 2 county cremations a year in Chambers.
I'm not bad with
It's
that.
crazy.
For a JPD to
Put the onus on.
say,
the funeral home to make that.
I think that's a jury. I don't know. They're usually out by Wednesday, but there's a jury that
The county court county, that's very fine.
on the 19th.
Even Tuesday's good.
There's
No,
It'd be better.
Jay,
They're very.
there's a jury trial in County Court Law on the 18th, so be careful. There's a jury trial in County Court Law on the 18th. You're gonna have it at the courthouse. So you wanna have it here?
Yeah.
You gotta get me some tech in this building. I'd let me buy some tech.
You're gonna claim you're gonna pay for it. Because they're probably claiming it for financial reasons.
We're checking.
Okay. I'm sure I'll.
So basically, somewhere on the 19th, 20th, or 21st. I told this lady to just send me your contact information. We'd send
We'll
her
meet 2 weeks.
email. Yeah.
Okay.
What is he have? What's he got on the?
So we're still gonna meet the 21st? Yes, no?
No, the 19th or the 20th?
19th Tuesday.
You know what? Sir, I didn't get your name, but if you send us an email or send me an email at co-clerk@co.liberty.tx, I'll make sure you get a notice.
What's he have on the?
Yeah, same thing on the Zoom, on the meeting. It just sends me your contact. You're gonna give it to me right now. Okay, that works. Thank you.
I've been called sir. She said sir, I was like, that's my dad. Tuesday or Thursday, either way works best. Be tough to get his schedule.
Yeah. Tuesday, 19th, 1:30.
Tuesday, the 19th at 1:30.
Right here.
All right. Thank you for letting me speak.
Yes, I want to go. I'm not paying attention. Already over. Energy saver.
All right.
Catherine, I give it to David.
Harold, we have a direction.
All right, sounds good.
Department, what do you think? Good?
I just want a new ME. I mean,
Oh, and I was gonna say that also. While Harold was at our office, we did the math on the mileage from Dayton to Jefferson County and Montgomery. Same exact.
I was gonna mention that. I was wondering if it was.
Well, and now that you have the toll road open, I mean, we can bill the county for the $12. I'm just kidding.
But you have to kind of work that into the fee as well.
Yes.
Figuring that out, but hopefully they'll be able to take us on a contract basis. They are apparently out of capacity. They have bodies in refrigerated trucks if they're.
See if we can get a map of the cab, that shows what our lights are like.
They produce an app for patrol cars with this patrol bikes.
Yes. Where's the list? Ivan, anything? Oh, good. Next, Brad?
I'm just glad to see you. The whole day.
I think it's all right, y'all. I guess it's better. It's all.